down this evening with Larry Brown and Ajtiim Lee. These are two fine young gentlemen who have grown up in this area that we are in right now, which is known as Zone 18, or the, what you gentlemen refer to it as Zone 18?
Coldstream Homestead, Montebello community.
Okay. So, Larry here is a project manager and a graduate of City High School and Coppin State University.
T. Baltimore City College.
Class of 95.
93 right chair.
As you see, these gentlemen are proud of their alma mater.
Absolutely.
Ajtiim Lee here is an entrepreneur and a graduate of City and Morgan State University. We'll talk to these gentlemen this evening about a few things that...
Not a graduate, an attendee.
Excuse me, attendee.
I'm a graduate of Coppin State.
CSU.
In both fine HBCUs. We're going to talk to these gentlemen this evening about issues that kind of arise in the black community in ways that they potentially overcame them, and things that they would probably do as far as giving advice to other young men and women about making it out of the same environment and being able to do productive things and be successful members of society. So, start with Larry. What advice would you give a young man, a young woman, growing up in an impoverished situation as far as making it out?
I think one of the key things I simply say is never stop chasing your dreams, no matter what type of environment or even the people that surround you. Because oftentimes we become products of our environment. You know what I mean? But being young, many of us, we had big dreams, but because of other people who failed for one reason or another, they begin to steal our dreams from us. So I just tell young brothers and sisters who grew up like we did, never stop chasing your dreams. But we got to recognize, in order to be successful and to reach your dream, you got to be able to put in hard work and dedication.
What about you, Ajtiim?
Right in line with what Larry said, and I choose to simplify it. One of the biggest keys is just exposure. Get exposed, get out of your comfort zone. Whenever you get out of your comfort zone, you put yourself in a situation where you can grow. Growth and exposure is huge in overcoming obstacles. It allows you to come up with other options to create solutions and resolutions.
Absolutely.
So, do either of you, well, take it back to you, Larry. Do you feel that different cultural issues hinder people in the black community, or do you feel like some of those things that are known as cultural issues are just fact cultural issues and they don't really do too much?
No, I think it's a fact that cultural issues definitely can hinder us as blacks, and even, again, systematic racism and things of that nature. But again, I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole. But I think what's critical is for us as a culture to support one another. And again, Baltimore is known as the crab in the barrel city. You know what I'm saying? But instead of having that negative connotation, or when we see somebody trying to make it out, we pull them back down. We got to be that arm that's pulling people up. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's really critical. And again, Ajtiim is a great example of that. You know what I mean? Using his network, using his information, using his platform to just kind of help empower others. And I think we just need to see more of that, and we need more people to buy into it.
What about you?
Repeat the question for me.
Question was, do you feel different cultural issues kind of hindered people in the black community, whether it be male or female, and what type of things do you feel like those hindrances are, or how do you feel like you can kind of overcome it?
Absolutely. Cultural issues are underlying problem with respect to recognizing that we are all the same, right? So when it comes to the mind duping that wherever it's come from, like Larry said, we don't want to go into the rabbit hole too much today. But I think the biggest problem is that we don't look at each other and see ourselves. So we're trained from wherever we get that training from, we're trained to look at each other differently. You know, so you don't respect this man, or you don't respect this woman, or you don't respect this culture. And I think if we start there with understanding each other, right? If we understand each other's culture, and we start to see each other in each other, which is it's a huge obstacle. You know, there are many layers to why that isn't something that we're taught to do. But absolutely, you know, there are many underlying cultural issues, and that's a part of the reason that we're taking on the challenge of introducing change. It's not about changing others, it's about changing yourself first. You know, changing your thought process, changing your mindset. So absolutely, I do think that that's an issue.
And even if I could just add too, I think it's just important for us to really have a greater self-love or self-worth in our own community, in our own culture. Again, I think for so long, we've again been duped or had the perception of self-hate for so many years, and that's why it's so easy for us to disrespect or even to take a life of a brother who looked just like us. But if we have more love for ourselves and our culture, I think, as our team said, we can see one another in each other and begin to support and nurture that relationship. So we gotta have love for our own culture, love for self.
Do you feel that everyone has equal opportunity, that they come from an area such as Zone 18 or just in a city like Baltimore? Do you feel like they're kind of off to a negative or poor footing, if you will, from the onset?
I mean, absolutely. I think growing up in poverty-stricken neighborhoods and communities, it definitely is an extra hurdle for us to get over to even get on to even playing fields. But again, as I mentioned a little earlier, just because we are in tough situations or we find ourselves in a hole doesn't mean we just need to be product of our environment or just to lay there and play dead.
What would you say to the young man or young woman who is almost looking at that or using it as a crutch? What encouragement or words of encouragement would you give to them to not look at where they are as being this hindrance, or not look at it as being this complete death sentence, if you will, that they can overcome it?
I simply tell them is, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Don't give up. You know what I mean? Again, continue just to chase your dreams. Whatever you desire to be, you can be if you're willing to put the work in. So just, again, we grew up in Zone 18. We grew up in a neighborhood where many of our friends, family members were either in prison or was murdered. But again, we was not statistics. We didn't allow that same end road to be ours, because we recognize that life is so much bigger than just the hood of Zone 18. So again, I just encourage them to say, look, man, just put the work in. If you put the work in, you work hard work and dedication will yield you the results. So right now you might be in a catch-22, but again, you can work your way out of it.
What about you, Ajtiim? Do you feel that everyone that grows up in environments such as Zone 18 or cities like Baltimore are off to equal footing or have equal opportunity?
Absolutely not, and by design. But I choose to answer that question by highlighting the scripture says that God will use your enemies for your footstool, right? So what happens in these environments, and Larry is a prime example, everything that's put in front of you to stop you actually strengthens you and makes you stronger. And then once you get into the room, right? Once you get your degree and now you're on these boards and you're working in corporate America, you actually have strategies and techniques that other people in that room haven't developed, because you've had to come up with ways to overcome and come out of scenarios and situations that those people, they haven't had to deal with, or a lot has been given to them. So I think our work ethic, yet it comes from a seemingly negative place. I think our work ethic is birthed by the unlevel playing field that we are born into in environments like this.
Now, with that, do you feel like that's kind of relegated to everyone that's growing up in the environment like this, or is it just like a black?
No. Actually, and everybody black is not, everybody that's black and that's living in the hood is not poor, right? And that's a good question. You know, that's a good point to highlight, that everybody living in what's called the hood, right, is not there because they can't live somewhere else. You know, some people are actually making strategic financial decisions to be in these environments, whether they see the property value coming up, or they just know that, hey, you know, my overhead is lower in this environment, or you could actually choose to live on a clean, quiet block. There's a variety of circumstances and situations that are in the community, but going back to our earlier point, if we don't look at each other and see ourselves, and if we don't interact amongst ourselves, then I think it's less likely that we'll even interact with other cultures and then go outside of our community.
And also, the question made me think about something. I mean, oftentimes, again, many of us, we grew up playing sports. And when you ask the question about the impact of, a negative impact possibly of the environment or the community in which we was raised in, it's almost like if you play basketball or what have you, and you get on a court, and you might have a team full of guys that's under 5 feet, but your opponent is 6 feet and high and taller. You know what I mean? Just because you are at a disadvantage don't mean you don't go out there and play hard, or you just can quit. And that's the things, the flip side of growing up in tough neighborhoods. It gives you a certain attitude that we can't quit. We just got to work that much harder and push that much more harder for us to be successful. So just because we had a disadvantage, it gives us an edge, because we recognize we got to put our best foot forward. And again, we prime examples of that attitude and the result of coming on the other side.
Okay. So what you just said, do you get kind of thinking about it from a sports perspective? Is that kind of looking at it more strategically then from that point of view? Because with some of that aspect of sports, if you have the team where everyone's 5'5", but you only have one person that may be above 6 foot, you may operate a little differently, and you shouldn't play the game that the other team is playing, because you can't. You can't win that game playing it the same way, because you aren't equipped the same way. You come up with a different strategy.
Absolutely.
So
you got to play your game.
Yeah.
And then to Larry's point, we had a 5, right? Me, Silk, Larry. I mean, you give us any other two, whether it's P-Dub and Poppy, right? They over 6 feet, but what we would do is we would just run them off the court, because 6 feet, 6'5", right? I'm 5'11". I'm quick, I'm fast. My man quick, he fast. If you miss a shot and we get the rebound, we run it. We're gonna run your ass in the ground, to the point where by the time we get to halftime, or we get, you know, midway of the game, you're gonna be so tired that your height doesn't create the advantage that it used to. You know what I mean? So like you said, for every, and I learned this in wrestling, for every move there's a counter move, right? I learned that in jiu-jitsu. For every move there's a counter move, right? For every, and in chess, right? For every move there's a counter move. For every strategy there's a counter strategy, right? So if your opponent is bigger, then you use your speed, you know, and then vice versa. You see this in football. If your opponent is fast, then you get physical with them and you beat on them, right, to take that out of them. And then at the end of the day, it just matters who has the strongest will, right? Who wants it the most? Because when you run into a team that is just as gutsy, gritty, grimy, and knows, you know, how to use their strengths and capitalize on your weaknesses, at the end of the day, it's who wants it the most. Right. And I think that the beauty of those competitive analogies that we make is having respect for your opponent, right? Because let's be honest. If you don't respect your opponent, you don't even study him and understand him, right? Even in racism, if you don't even study and understand racism, you turn a blind eye to the advantages that your opponents have on you. Mm-hmm. When you embrace your opponent, right? When you respect them, now you say, okay, even if we gotta go all the way down to the wire, bucket for bucket, right? It's all about positioning yourself for who gets the last shot. And that's one of the beauties of sports. When both teams come out and play their A game and they hitting on all cylinders, now it's about time of possession. Who's gonna have the ball last? who gets the chance to score last. And that's the thing that I'm looking forward to coming out of the relationships and the networks that we create here, because I think that if we understand how to counter the things that we're dealing with, and let me say, in 2021, man, we are doing a lot better as black people than most people recognize or even are told. But I think we're starting to come to that place where it's like, who's gonna get the ball last? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You get the ball, you make your strides, and I don't want to get into politics and say Trump and Obama, but you know, who's gonna get that possession last, and in enough time to score and then win?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right. And I think critical too is that the message needs to be to our people, and just to encourage anybody, always play to win.
Absolutely.
We might not always win, but
Play
whenever
to win.
you play, you're going to play to win. And as our team was alluding to, you just want to stay in the game. You know what I'm saying? Because oftentimes it can be David and Goliath type of situations. You can be truly outmatched, but no matter what, just kind of continue just to play to win, because you never know. If you keep it close, you know what I mean, something can happen to really go in your favor. But set aside from that, you know, even every loss is still a lesson. So we just need to realize that as long as we play to win, put our best foot forward, we're going to come out winning anyway.